Wake up, wake up.
America is already great.
Wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up.
When they go low, we go high.
That's our motto. We want freedom by any means necessary.
Wake up. The front page with Dominic DePrima is on. News, knowledge, and your voice. The views and opinions expressed on the front page are not necessarily those of Taxi Productions or KJLH. Rise, shine, and stay woke. It's the front page with Dominic DePrima on Radio Free 102.3 KJLH.
If you dare to struggle, you dare to win. If you dare not to struggle, then you don't deserve to win.
Wake up, wake up.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the front page on 102.3 Radio Free KJLH. My name is Starlett Quarles, and I will be filling in again for Dominic DePrima this morning. Today, we will be addressing an issue that has been ignored in our community for far too long. It's time for us to have an open and honest conversation about sexual abuse and the sex trafficking of our young girls. While many may assume that sex trafficking victims primarily consist of foster youth and runaways, this is far from the truth. Human sex trafficking can happen to anyone's child, whether she comes from a foster home, a single parent home, or in an upper middle class community. Anyone's child is at risk of becoming a victim because it's not about socioeconomics. Many young girls are lured or manipulated into this lifestyle because of an emotional void they're feeling in their lives. They don't feel loved, valued, cherished, affirmed, or even heard by the people closest to them. And so what do? They sometimes fall prey to a young female recruiter who pretends to befriend her only to lead her into a life of abuse and trauma. Or they sometimes form an emotional bond to a man who manipulates and exploits the void she feels by not having her father present in her life. So to that extent, it's really time for us to have a discussion about the realities of what our young urban girls are experiencing on the tracks and what we need to do as a community. So to provide some context as to how pervasive this issue is in our backyards, I'm going to read some statistics here from the 2016 report on the status of women in LA County. But first, I'm going to read their definition of human trafficking. Human trafficking is the business of coercing or transporting a person for exploitation. And there are two broad categories of exploitation: labor and or sex slavery. Now some stats. Did you know the Federal Bureau of Investigation has identified Los Angeles as one of 13 high-intensity child prostitution areas in the United States? Did you know that the average age of onset for commercial sexual exploitation is 12 to 14 for girls and 11 to 13 for boys? Did you know that the life expectancy of a child involved in commercial sexual exploitation is 7 years from the first date of his or her exploitation, while the leading causes of death being HIV, AIDS, or homicide? And did you know that California is one of 3 states, the other 2 being Florida and Texas, most affected by human trafficking? Now, I know you didn't know, because I didn't know, just like so many people in our communities don't know about the reality of the human sex trafficking industry, because we're not talking about it, or we don't believe we're not impacted by it, or honestly, many have discarded these young children as simple prostitutes living a life of choice or circumstance. It's not my child. But what I hope to gather from today's conversation is that while he or she may not be your child, they are someone else's. And she or he may be a lot closer to you than you think, because the next victim could be your neighbor's child or a young girl at your church or even within your family. So the goal for this morning's conversation is to bring light to an issue that is drastically impacting the next generation of urban families by having a broad discussion about the realities of human sex trafficking in our urban community. So today, our show is entitled Human Sex Trafficking and Today's Urban Youth, and we have some absolutely fantastic guests, starting with my first, Reverend Deborah Manns, president of the Virtuous Woman, Inc. Reverend Manns is a prophetic voice and concerned about the plight of families and women of all ages. Her goal is to restore hope and virtue back to their lives. She's the founder and CEO of the Virtuous Woman Ministries, Inc., which is a ministry dedicated to empowering women and men to live healthy, fulfilling lives. She is also the president director of Project Destiny, an organization that engages in public policy and civic engagement in Curly Heads, an initiative to reduce the amount of young women going into the juvenile justice system through runaway and or sex trafficking. Please welcome Reverend Deborah Manns to the front page. How you doing, lady?
I am well, and you?
Good. Thank you for joining us this morning. Next, we have Orry Freeman. Orry was 11 years old when she was forced into the child sex trade in Orange County. Now at age 20, she's speaking out to help other girls escape abuse. Freeman's story shows just how quickly children from disadvantaged backgrounds can be taken into a criminal sex trafficking underworld that exists just down the street from Disneyland. Freeman was born to a prison inmate and was then adopted by a single mother. Her troubles began at a young age. When she was only 9 years old, Freeman was molested and raped. She ran away when she was 11 years old, trusting a friend to take her in. Instead, that friend left her with a pimp who raped her immediately and then subjected her to torture and abuse over the next 4 years as he sold her into the child sex trade. Please welcome Orry Freeman this morning. Good morning, sweetie.
Good morning.
How you doing?
Doing good.
Thank you for joining us. And last, we have a parent of a sex trafficking survivor named Rachel, who chooses to share her story but remain anonymous. Good morning, Rachel. How you doing?
Good morning. I'm fine. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for sharing. Welcome. And thank you all for joining us here on the front page. Now, before I get into a conversation with our guests, I want to play an excerpt from a documentary on Santoya Brown. For those of you who may not be familiar with her tragic story, Santoya is a sex trafficking survivor who at the age of 16 was sentenced to a life in prison for killing a man who had picked her up for sex. Brown, now 29, was imprisoned in Tennessee following her trial and life sentence for the death of 43-year-old Johnny Mitchell Allen, who had paid her for sex. Advocates for Brown and her lawyers say she is a victim of sex trafficking and her sentence was too extreme given her age and circumstances. Now, after 13 years, her story has recently been brought to light because of the viral support she's received through social media with the hashtag #FreeSantoyaBrown, and from the support she's received from celebrities like Rihanna, LeBron James, Snoop Dogg, and Kim Kardashian West, who has gone as far as to hire her personal attorney, Sean Holly, to free Santoya. I have to say that has to be one of the most selfless acts I've ever seen a celebrity do. So what we're going to do is we're going to listen to an excerpt from the documentary that sheds light on Santoya's story entitled Me Facing Life, Santoya's Story. I highly recommend that you guys look it up on YouTube. It's an absolutely fantastic documentary. In this portion of the documentary, we're going to learn about her childhood, Santoya's childhood, and her biological family's legacy and trauma with mental illness, which ultimately leads Santoya's feelings of abandonment and insecurity. The male's voice that you will hear is Santoya's psychologist. The first female voice is her biological mother, and the last is her adopted mother. Let's take a listen, and then we're going to hear from our guest.
Well, yes, I had a good meeting with her. We met for 2 hours, and she talked a great deal about her life and about the offense. Her biological mother's side of the family is extremely heavily loaded with psychiatric disorders.
Bipolar, personality disorder, suicidal, manic depressive, which is an guarded condition. At times I've had homicidal thoughts for people that have hurt me. I've been raped, and I've always, wanted to do things to them for hurting me.
Let me ask you this. You actually attempted suicide in the past?
Yes, ma'am.
What is this tattoo on your last leg?
Suicide.
And Dr. Burnett will address, but is there a history of suicide throughout your family, actual suicides?
My mom shot herself in front of me when I was in 2nd grade. Her sister, which is my aunt, just killed herself with a shotgun. My grandpa, he shot himself in the head. My Aunt Shirley, she's tried to kill herself God knows how many times.
So that's the half having to do with genetics. the half having to do with early development is, I guess, is interesting in the sense that, the basic theory is that people have trouble during achieving these first two stages of life, and that's ages 0 to 3 or 4. And that's exactly the point in Santoya's life that was just totally messed up. First of all, she lived with a number of different people. I was trying to keep track of the different caretakers, but there were 6 or 7 different people who took care of Santoya, and this meant comings and goings and separations, and at one point she was kidnapped by a family member, and she felt like she had been abandoned by the other mother. This is exactly the kinds of problems that would create a failure to achieve the attachment and then the healthy separation.
We started to see really, really bizarre behaviors as far as very manipulative, controlling the situation, very possessive.
How was she possessive? What types of things?
Well, I can only speak, she was very possessive when it came to her and I as far as our relationship goes. Whenever she thought that I was getting too close to someone or someone was getting too close to me, then she would act out. Pouting, stubborn behavior, jealousy, that sort of thing.
I think that's exactly what happened here, is that she was born with the vulnerability, and then during this critical period up to age 3, she ends up with all these wrong separation experiences, and she ends up with this personality disorder.
So, Deborah, I want to go to you first. And listening to Santoya's story, talk about the influence and the intergenerational transfer of trauma and what some of these girls that you're working with experience in their households.
The first point, I have to catch myself because, I get real emotional when I listen to a lot of these
the abuse and the legacy of this child's abuse in her family was just horrific.
It was, but what I want to make the point is what the psychologist said that a lot of people don't pay attention to, and that is trauma starts in the womb. And because the mother was already suffering from mental health, and she had already experienced her actual mother committing suicide in front of her at 2. She has a history of the family who has been suicidal, who has had drug abuse, who has been a part of domestic violence all her life. When Santoya was conceived in her mother's womb, she had already began to be traumatized from the time that seed was planted until the second she was born. And what a lot of times we don't get is that when that child is born, and if there is not an immediate change in that family before that child is of age, that child becomes a product of their environment. Children do what they see.
Absolutely.
And because that seed was already planted in her of trauma, her life was already set for failure because everyone around her could not emotionally care for her.
There's several Santoyas out there who have similar stories, if not worse. But not every sex trafficking survivor comes from a home of trauma. Whose child is at risk of becoming a victim of human sex trafficking?
Anybody's child, anybody's son, anybody's daughter can be a victim of trafficking. The reason why a lot of people think that most of the victims come from foster care or juvenile probation is because statistically that's how we measure it. But when we were talking yesterday, like I was saying to you, we make now many traditional kids foster youth because once they become a runaway, now they become a part of the public system or they become a part of probation instead of offering those families resources and services that do not include taking them out of the home or putting them on some type of law enforcement, literally servicing them with counseling, servicing them with mental health services. We are creating traditional families now that have to go see their kids at a group home or in juvenile hall. So that is a part of the problem. Anybody's child can be a victim, can be recruited.
Rachel, I see you shaking your head.
Yes, ma'am.
Talk about children and the various homes that they come from. They don't just come from foster care.
No, they come from single parent. They come from mother, father. They come from grandparents. And like Reverend Deborah said, the system is not supportive of them.
Okay. All right. Oree, I want to get into your story. And thank you again so much for sharing your story and your experience with us this morning. So share with us a bit about your background and your childhood.
For me, I was a very sheltered kid. Although I grew up in Los Angeles, in South Central, in a lot of gang-infested areas, I was sheltered. Like, my mom bused me to a lot of the schools that were out of our city, right? So I went to just the proper schools, the private schools. My mother was a different generation, I guess you can say. So very sheltered. Like, a lot of the communication that we should have had, we just didn't have conversations about what was going on in my community.
Are you an only child?
I am the only adopted child.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I didn't even know that I was adopted at first. I came into a single mother home. My mother did the best that she could, like worked 3 jobs, worked for recreations and parks. Did it as much as she could. And I think a lot of the trauma that started taking place as a younger child, the molestation, the rapes and stuff like that, there was no communication. Those were things like, in my family, we didn't talk about that. Like, we didn't talk about things that happened or went on. It was just kind of swept under the rug for most of my life. And I think a lot of that, it played a huge part in why I was so vulnerable to being a part of the life, because the conversations that my mother should have been having with me, I was finding out from the streets. I was finding out from friends. I was finding out from, even those bus rides coming back home and wondering why women are in the street corner or why dudes is hanging out on the block. Like, those were conversations between peers and not my mom.
So when you would inform your mom that you were either molested or raped, how did she respond?
It was very quiet. Like, when we came from the hospital both times, it was one of those things where you just didn't know what to say.
Okay.
Like, my mother didn't come from a family like that, and I think it was very different from her. Like, shocking, not shocking, but she didn't know what to say, and she could have done more, a lot more. And the responses, I had a lot more responses from family than my mom. Like, my mom was the youngest out of 13. Like, so a lot of times discipline or conversations came from other people, and it should have came from my mother.
And so how did you deal with that initial trauma? Who did you seek counsel from?
I didn't seek any counsel. By the time I was 11 years old, I ended up in probation, and that was from having a charge right at 11 years old. I ended up on probation. That's what led me to the system. And I think that was the one thing that my mom was just kind of like wash her hands with. That was it. And I was placed in the system for the rest of my childhood. I didn't get help because I didn't even know that I was a victim to anything. Right. It was normal to me. That was completely my normal and chaos and of where I come from.
Okay. All right.
I wanted to just intercede with that, what Oree is saying. That's the one main point that we started out with. Many times I have a few minors right now that I'm working with that have not become recruited into trafficking yet, but they were raped or molested by a cousin, an uncle, or a brother at 7, at 9. And when the parents found out, they did nothing.
How do you not do anything?
And
is it because they don't know how to? They're not equipped? I mean, how do you not love on your child?
Trauma, it's not that they don't love on the child, but Oree is making a valid point. In most African American communities, and I don't want to say all because that's extreme.
Okay.
We do not discuss things that traumatize us.
Very good.
So the parents are hurting because now they feel like, what could I have done to prevent? You could not do nothing because a predator is going to be a predator, whether you're around or whether you're not around. The problem is that the healing needs to start once the information has been revealed. Okay. I have 2 girls right now, one 14 and one 15. And I tell people all the time, and their parents, they come to me, I just can't deal with her anymore. She's this, she's that. And the mother is like, they come against the child because it's like, I can't help her because of what happened.
Okay.
And what I try to explain to the parent is that this is a healing process that takes 2, not 1. And not only that, you have to understand, well, she doesn't act 14. She acts like she's grown. I said in her spirit she is. Because that predator that was 18, that raped her when she was 7, that spirit is growing in her. So she's not 14. If that predator that first assaulted her is 25, in her spirit she's 25 because that spirit grows with her.
Rachel.
Speaking as a parent, I can agree with Reverend Deborah because a lot of single moms and maybe parents all together, it's an embarrassment for them to find out that their child's been molested or raped. Or
now, was your child molested or raped prior to getting into the life?
No.
Okay, all right.
My daughter, she wasn't molested or raped. She became victim by recruitment.
Okay. But prior to that, what was your challenges in being a single mom with a teenager?
None.
You had no challenge. Why you say that?
She did not. I'm talking for her. She did not have any challenges.
She was a good girl?
She was a good girl.
Okay.
She was recruited from a McDonald's in Compton.
So it's not always the bad kid.
No.
It's not always the one who doesn't
home
have...
from school every day with her best friend.
Okay.
And the guy that recruited her as a boyfriend. And we can get back and forth into that conversation, or you can elaborate on it a little more, because she actually has lived that, side. But he recruited her as his girlfriend, and he was an adult, and she was in 8th grade at the time. But he basically started buying her tennis shoes and meeting her at McDonald's after school, buying her and her friend food. Then she came home with a hair weave and some nails, and then she just stopped coming home.
But you did say during her childhood that there was a period of time you had some up and down with your job or with your husband.
I worked in a legal system for 23 years. And after 23 years, I ended up losing my job. So I made a transition from getting $5,000 a month to $2,000 a month.
Okay. And but you said that she wanted certain things, but you couldn't buy it for her.
She wanted like shoes, clothes, the updated stuff. If your friends get the new Air Jordans, she wants the new Air Jordans.
Or the new jewelry.
So I have to explain to her that I'm not at that same pay level anymore. So it's going to take a little while. We could do layaway. She didn't want the layaway. She didn't want the layaway. She wants the right now.
I used to love layaway. So, Deborah, that was...
We old. Do they have layaway now?
I'm talking about this layaway. I'm going to get it eventually. And so part of, I guess, the grooming process with her boyfriend was that she was getting these material things. Although she had a happy, loving, parent at home, the guy was showering her with gifts and things, which enticed her into this emotional bond.
It enticed her, but the thing that we also need to talk about is that single parent homes is lacking another parent.
And I was going to ask you, where was her, Rachel, in terms of your daughter, what role did her father play in her life?
Be nice.
Ooh. You got to tell her to be nice?
Yes.
And know you on the radio.
We on KJLH, be nice.
Literally, he lives 5 blocks away from us.
Okay. Her entire life?
Her entire life.
Okay.
He told us we had to make an appointment to see him.
I said be nice.
How does that work?
One day I dropped her off to him. Before I can get home, he was bringing her back to me.
But that's a lot of our young girls, the issues that they have with these fathers. And so some of that opens them up to being vulnerable to predators and things of that nature.
Can I
yes?
just,
yeah, absolutely.
A part of it too, a lot of times, even no matter where they come from and what kind of families, I can genuinely say, doing a lot of trainings and working with youth in high schools and stuff, the biggest thing, if I even pull 3 kids up and ask them, tell me 3 things that you love about yourself, that you are confident about, they can't answer that question. It's more than sometimes just our families and just our mothers, right? Because my mother did the best that she can and stuff like that. It was internal, stuff that I was dealing with and trying to figure myself out in a world that was trying to make me like everybody else. That self-esteem issue, plays so much, even with our young girls and what they see and what, it just plays a huge part.
I tell Rachel and many of my other parents, children have to identify. They need to know why my nose is this way. Mm-hmm. Why do I have these eyes or these fingers or these toes? Why do I laugh like this? Why? And when they cannot make that connection, as Orry was saying, it's now I'm in the world trying to figure me out. Who am I? Mm-hmm. Where did I come from? Who made me? And why am I around all these people that cannot relate to who I am? Because again, within our African American community, it's so hard many times for us to connect to our own self as parents, as family members. And it's so amazing. I was just at listening last night with John Hope Bryan, and he talked about it best. Black folks have not gotten the memo. We have not gotten the memo that it is time for us to readjust our own lives and connect to who we are so that we can make our communities better. So many different times, because of what happened back in slavery days, that connect is still there between the male and the female, and that inability to nurture our children the right way.
Absolutely. I've done so many shows on the intergenerational curses of slavery that we refuse to talk about, that have impacted not only our communities, but just our relationships between, men and women. Absolutely. And how we raise our kids and how we identify as Black people. We are at the top of the hour, and this is 102.3 Radio Free KJLH, Compton, Los Angeles, Long Beach, and Inglewood. And if you're just tuning in, I'm Starlett Quarles, and today I'm filling in for Dominique DePrima, and our conversation is on human sex trafficking and today's urban youth. Now, Deborah, before I ask you how these young girls end up getting recruited into the life, please share with us the work that you do, because you do some amazing work on the tracks. So first of all, talk about the tracks, because some people don't even know what the tracks are, and describe the 3 types of victims.
Which one you want me to answer first?
First of all, tell us what you do. What you do? What you be doing on the tracks, girl? You all glammed up. You be on the traps with them red bottoms.
You're running.
Okay. No, we're laughing. We're making light of it. But in all honesty, Deborah, you do an absolutely amazing job with the work that you do with these girls. So talk about the Virtuous one, what you're doing with the girls on the tracks, and then describe, just for our audience, the 3 types of victims.
Well, I'll make it really short. For the last 9.5 years, we have become a voice for the voiceless.
Okay.
We do direct advocacy, we do mentoring, and we work directly with victims and families. In 2009, we began to do street outreach where we were actually recovering runaway and missing girls.
Like you were actually going on the tracks?
Yeah, I was going out in the streets.
Okay.
And recovering runaway and missing girls. That is how the Project Destiny was created. And we had discovered back in 2008 that 500 missing minor reports will be reported to law enforcement a month. 500 kids as missing or runaway. But law enforcement absolutely didn't have any department that addressed finding these kids. Organically, I just start finding them. Okay. And I became known for, if your kid is missing, call Reverend Deborah Mann, she'll find her. And we created Project Destiny, which was the initiative, because what happened is when I started recovering many of these girls, they were with pimps or older men, or they were living with
And how old were some of these girls?
13, 14, and they were living with a friend from school and a parent. How do you have a 13-year-old at your house for a month and you never say, where's your mom?
Right.
Where's your dad? Or I need to take you home. And this began more interviews with law enforcement and juvenile judges, where I found out that many of these kids are being incarcerated into the halls because they were pleading out. So basically, they're run away, or they get arrested or picked up. The family doesn't receive them back home. They go to juvenile hall. Juvenile hall takes them to court, and now they're pleading out for things that they should not be incarcerated for. So we became a voice for them, and basically we just went and fought, like, you can't do this to these kids. From there, we just kept going, and now we are in the process of March 2018 of opening specialized housing for short-term residential therapeutic treatment for victims of sex trafficking from the ages of 14 to 18.
That's fantastic. Now, when you would go on these tracks, you wouldn't necessarily try to convince them to get off, but you would give them wipes, you would give them condoms, you would give them these little care packages.
Well, what we started doing is when I would go out there, and the millennial name is called the Blade. They don't really call it necessarily the track.
Okay.
They call it the Blade.
The Blade.
We're old.
Okay.
We're old, so everyone has a different name for it.
Okay.
The whole stroll, the track, the Blade.
And what communities are these primarily in? You're talking about what areas?
There's a lot of different blades or tracks, and they have secret tracks where people don't even know that they're there. If you see a young lady walking down the street that you know do not live in your area, she don't even look like she live in your area, she's probably on a date. She's probably going to that date's house. You want to say something, Orry? She's probably going to... Orry, you want to say something?
Anywhere there's a U-turn sign, you can have a track. You can have someone that's
Anywhere where
purchasing.
there's a U-turn sign.
Right. And a lot of times, well, now, for us, it's moving into our internet. Like, a lot of it's hidden now. It's not like how it was when I was in the life, or how it was in my mom's period of time when she was out there. It's completely different. It's now being hidden, and a lot of times it's, so for the internet and stuff. But anywhere you can find a U-turn, or where you have oncoming and ongoing traffic, you can.
Okay, so you see it everywhere.
Did you want to say something, Rachel?
Well, you see it, you're just not paying attention to it.
Yeah, you're seeing it, not paying attention. Because where I live, it happens outside of my house every night.
Every night?
On the side of her house,
On the side of my house.
And the
I
police-
walk outside and it's condoms, everything on the side of my house. I call the police. They say, what color is the car? What they doing?
But that's a good point that Rachel's talking about, because part of how I start working with her and her daughter is, and I'm glad we brought about that, because we forgot that part. She lives close to one of the tracks. And every day she would take her daughter to school. Her daughter would ask her, Mommy, why are those ladies standing out on the corner?
Okay.
This goes back to what we were talking about trauma and environment. If you see a person standing on the corner every morning going to school, you're going to be curious. You're going to ask your parent, what is that person doing? Why is that person there? Orry said it best. We have to have these conversations with our children. Even though it has shifted from the time that my ladybug, her daughter, was smaller to now she's growing up as a minor, a young teenager, that reflection is going to always be in her head. Right?
Just to reiterate that just because, a child lives in a particular neighborhood, they may be susceptible because they see
Pimps
it.
drive everywhere.
They drive everywhere.
Schools, they drive the hair shops, the nail shops,
and not only that,
the parks.
The shows that we've done before, and women who have shared their stories, they've gone to modeling agencies, come from upper middle class communities. They were on the bus stop, coming home from their upscale private school.
Right.
And so irrespective, although the circumstances that we're talking about are primarily in urban communities, it could be in anybody's upper middle class community where your daughter is, by herself or looking for an opportunity, or does, like you said, have some self-esteem issues and is open to being validated by a man's comfort or a man's gift. So it's really about, in terms of parents, really being in tune to your child, yes?
Me and my daughter, we talked about sex.
And I know what it's about
stuff.
with moms and teenage daughters. I was one, so I can understand the challenges, and going through that time frame when teenage daughters are just very combative and attitudes and, the hormones is kicking in. Trust me, I know that was me.
Well, my daughter, she would tell me that I'm jealous of her. And I'm like, I'm not jealous of you. I'm just trying to show you, like, what's going on in the world. And the guy went to so far to try to say he was her brother and would go to the school to try to get her out from school.
And you didn't even know that?
No.
Yeah, because I was going back and forth to school, even when I was on a runaway. Like, because I know that I know for me back then, even if you were homeless, you were basically, you had the right to go to school. Right. And if I didn't miss a certain amount of absences, then it wouldn't be notified by the school, right? They wouldn't call the home. So, and the last place my mom would think is like, oh, she's going to go to school at all. Like a lot of times. And a lot of times we'll talk, like, probably we'll talk about some of the terms, like the bottom girl would pick me up from school because guess what? She was on my emergency card. And she could do that because guess what? I was a foster youth. Nobody knew who my real parents or family was.
Right.
So it's very access to them.
And we're going to get into some detail after the commercial break about your story. But just in general, how are some of these girls getting recruited? How are some of these girls getting caught up into the lifestyle, Orry?
There's just different ways, and I can say what's getting very scary is that it's over social media now. Oh my gosh, and what they see and people portraying that this lifestyle is something glamorous, or it's okay to do and it's okay to be comfortable and have sex and not have it for free. So that's playing a huge part now. But I know for me, just like the different ways, like there's either, like the Romeo pimp, the guy that is very sweet talking, right? Like the boyfriend that you can convince this girl at 11 years old that this is my man, right? And then you have some men that are gorilla pimps that are very, very violent, that kidnap kids off of the street, like literally off of a bus stop. Right? Like finding those youth that may be tweeting and Snapchatting, right? With their headphones in, walking down the street, not being aware of their surroundings. Right. And then you have the CEO pimp, like the man, the professional that may make already a certain type of tax income, right? That's doing things on the side. And then you have the modeling agents, right? And a lot of times too, what I'm seeing in the work that I do with advocacy is it's family now, especially for our inner kids like that. It's the relationship between a mom, maybe younger generation, like, well, you're having sex, you need to stop having sex for free, right? That's building this
like it's okay.
Like it's okay.
Yeah, you're going to help me pay the bills. I have girls like that. As everyone know, I have actually been a foster mom to some of my victims. And when I get them back on track, get them in school, they're doing great. They're not running away. They're stable. They're acting like a teenager for the first time. DCFS will say, okay, well, if they can do great with Reverend Mans, they can do great at home. So they send the kid back to where they took them from, and then the parent is like, well, you're not going to get what you was getting over there with Reverend Man. So, I'm not going to be mad at you if you go get your money because we need to pay our bills. So they literally send my ladybugs back out on the street now that they're back home so that they can help their parents pay their bills. Wow. And this becomes now, as Orry was saying, now the parents become predators. I've had victims where they have brought other kids to their house, and the parent knew that all these kids was working and was collecting $100 a week from each girl to continue to let them stay in the house, and all of them were under 18.
That is crazy. That is crazy. Go ahead.
Never once would I take any money from my daughter. Never once would I even put her out there.
Well, Rachel's a little different, right? Because we're not saying all parents are this way.
No, of course not. Of course not.
My ladybug, her daughter, stayed totally away from home. When she was out as a runaway, she was a runaway. Okay. And she would come home when she got ready. All right. And and Orry can speak on that. That's what happens with a lot of girls that come from traditional homes. They'll run away for a month or 2 weeks or a week or 2 months, and then they'll just show back up at home.
Okay. All right. We're going to take a commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to continue our conversation on human sex trafficking and today's urban youth, as well as we're going to open up the phone lines. We want to hear from you. If you have any comments or questions for our absolutely fantastic panel today, give us a call here at KJLH. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and we will be right back on 102.3 Radio Free KJLH.
The Dialogue, the community voice of Southern California's young professional network. Relevant discussions about the thoughts, concerns, opportunities, and challenges faced by today's generational leaders. Real talk, real people. This is The Dialogue. The Dialogue with Starlett Quarles.
Welcome back to the front page. I'm your guest host, Starlett Quarles, filling in for Dominique DePrima today. And this morning, we've been keeping it 100, talking about the human sex trafficking in today's urban youth with my guests, Reverend Deborah Mans, Orry Freeman, and Rachel, a parent of a sex trafficking survivor. The phone lines are now open. We're going to go to a call. Sarita. How you doing, Sarita? Welcome to the front page. You have a comment.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I just want to let you know, guys, great show today. I mean, it's so awesome because we absolutely need this. Oh, my God, this is awesome. But I just want to touch on everything that they're saying is absolutely correct in regards of I've had friends who have looked for their children on the street because they've been recruited in human trafficking. But I can recall my daughters when they started in high school in 2013, and because human trafficking across the board is happening in different cities, the principal, when I was telling her, I said, well, I said, do you even know what they do in regards to recruiting the ladies and all of this, and so I went on to tell her that they claim they're modeling agencies, they take them shopping, they have them fill out applications where they would know where their residence is, they threaten their families, all of that is real. And the lady told me, the principal of a school told me, good luck with that.
Wow.
That's what she said.
Wow.
She said, good luck with that. So I'm not going to hold you guys because I know I'm sure it's other callers that want to hear this, but I'm just it feels so good to hear that we're fighting for each other.
Absolutely.
If we don't fight for each other, nobody else will fight for us.
Absolutely.
I'm real huge on kids that are out there in human trafficking, molestation, and rape. But you know what I've learned too over the years is that unfortunately, until it hits home, nobody cares.
Right.
They just don't care. So thank you for taking my call, and I'll finish and listen to my comments off the air. Thank you.
Thank you. And so, Deborah, in our inner city schools, a lot of the youth are foster youth. But again, we're not isolating that. This industry just is dependent on foster youth. But how do the administration at the schools, what are the schools doing in terms of helping or hurting with this issue?
To be honest, I have had better results with the counselors at schools versus the administrative personnel like the principal or the person in charge. I have a curriculum that was created by working with victims, helping them become champion survivors. And many times I present this curriculum on the prevention side because there's two curriculums. The Butterfly Journey was created for intervention, and then we have prevention, and that basically addresses how the recruitment looks and the vulnerability of social media and the balance between relationships of a child and an adult. The counselors are with it. They put together a proposal. They submit it to the district. The district goes, well, don't happen here. We're not going to bring that conversation. The issue for me is that when the school removes sex education from their educational system, we fail right there. Because if you cannot have certain kind of conversations in school and they're not having them at home, the first thing the kids is going to do is go to social media, go to the street, have that conversation, like Orry said, on the way home on the bus. And it's going to be so easy for them to be influenced because the places where we should be educating our children are taking away those things that should be made important.
Absolutely.
I'm 48 years old, and I definitely had sex education. They taught us how to put on condoms.
Absolutely.
They taught us about birth control. They taught us about sex, the penis, the vagina, the fallopian tubes, the whole thing.
Public school.
And they have changed so much. And everything now is where you have to grow up to be an IT engineer. So that the social media, internet energy is pushed so hard to our children. What do we expect that they're going to do?
Absolutely.
And then just before we convert to the other guests, another big part of the recruitment is, and I know a lot of people going to be mad at me, is rap music.
I was going to ask you about social media and entertainment.
Right. If you have a rapper talking about, I'm in love with a stripper, I ain't mad you getting your money, you dancing on the pole, and you independent. I can't.
And then you want to be Cardi B.
Right.
You want to be Cardi B.
I'm okay. I'm okay. It's not okay. What happened to you're in law school hitting them books and I'm a lift you up while you going where you got to go, and then I'm going to get my degree, and then we going to go together.
We're the generation that is still inspired by a Michelle Obama. These little girls don't want to go to school. They want to be Cardi B.
They don't even like school.
They don't even like school. They feel like they can be Kim Kardashian and do a sex video.
Right. We love school.
And become a YouTube star.
We would get up early in the morning and walk 2 hours to school.
And if we didn't, we was getting a whooping. You still remember whoopings?
Got a whooping.
Still remember whoopings?
Grandmama be in the car driving down the street looking for you.
I'm going to ask you later.
Stop that.
I'm going to ask you later, but I want you to talk about the responsibility of the church in this conversation. Go ahead, Rachel.
I was just saying the system stopped that. They tell the kids if your mama beat you, call 911.
My mother said, I'll pick up the phone for you.
Thank you.
That's me. Matter of fact, the chalk line is going to be already outlined before the police get here.
I'm going to be sitting on the porch with a cigarette waiting on them.
And Big Mama on the porch. We all have Big Mama on the porch. Orry, I have to get to your story. I have to get to your story because it brings some context and some reality into what our angels are experiencing. So at the age of 11, take us from the age of 11, what were the circumstances and how were you feeling personally that led you to run away from home?
At 11, honestly, it wasn't, I can honestly say, although maybe internally the rape and molestation played a huge part, right? But it was the feeling of I didn't belong. Like being bullied as being younger, finding out that I was adopted on Christmas at 11 years old. Like the sense of not being...
Stop there. You found out you were adopted at 11 years old.
On Christmas. Yeah.
On Christmas. Talk about the trauma of learning that the woman who has raised you all that time was not your biological mother. How did that impact you?
That was the biggest hurdle, I think, in my life because I felt like I was lied to. I felt like, me going to therapy now, right? I do EMDR twice a week. But it was the fact that I felt like I didn't belong already. And then when that information was brought to me in the wrong way, my mother should have told me. I actually had a cousin that told me. It hurt because I felt like I had already felt like I didn't belong, and I felt like now I didn't belong to this family. I had questions that couldn't be answered, and it was really, really difficult for me. And it was it had a lot. It played a lot in my identity and trying to figure out, okay, well, where's my mom? Like what does she look like? What was she like? And then you have an aunt that's telling you she's going to end up just like her mom. Okay, well, where is my mom? Right. And finding out all these things. My mother was on drugs. Like my mother was in prison when she had me fighting murder. Right, like all these different things that I had questions that should have been a conversation with my mom right? At the right appropriate time before it got to me another way. And that was what set my journey off of feeling like, after the rape, after molestation, after the game wreck, like, forget this. Like, I'm out of here. Like, I don't want to be here. I don't feel safe anymore. And in the process of running away, right, I had this friend that I met doing community service. I had 170 hours of community service probation gave me. And I would do it at this local library right off the track of Western. And what ended up happening was I met this girl, right? Like, I never had friends. Right. No, I was 11. She was about 13, 14.
Okay.
And she was my first friend. Like, I was an athletic kind of kid. I was a great kid, never disrespected my mom. Like, if my mom would kind of discipline me, I kind of like just tuned her out. Like, even when I was going through those times where they're like, oh, she's just negative or whatever, I just tuned my mom out. And she was my first friend. Like, pretty girl, right? Green eyes, light skin, like long hair, just the bomb. And she was just, I trusted her. And in the midst of me running away, I ran away to her house. Her mother was a nurse, right? She come from the good family, just lived in the ghetto, and wasn't home. The grandma was watching her at the time. She was like, yo, like, we need to leave, da 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 da. Like, she's like, I gotta go meet up with my boyfriend. And I'm like, yo, I just ran probably about 5 blocks. I don't even know how to get home. Like, So she's like, I'm like, all right, this is my friend. Go to the house. And for the first time in my life, I want the callers and people to understand, at 11 years old, when I ran away to her house, I had ponytails. Like, and from my family, we used to put these big, ugly balls in our hair with these ribbons that irritate your soul. It was cute, but it just irritated me. And I remember I had my school uniform, my white collar shirt and my blue pants, my shorts. And I remember my mom was still like a sheltered mom, would buy me Tuesday and Wednesday panties, like the panties that you buy from Target with the lace on it.
Monday through Sunday.
And I had those on. And I remember when I ran away, all I changed was my clothing, put on like a t-shirt, wrapped my hair up in a bun, and we went to this house. For the first time in my life, at 11 years old, a male, my exploiter, my pimp,
so you look pretty,
turned to me, but asked me, what are you doing out at this time of night? After the rapes, after the beatings, right? Not one person, not a school counselor, not a teacher, not a mother, not anyone ever asked me, was I okay? Not one person. At 11 years old, when someone asked me that, of course I felt vulnerable to that. It was a relief on my shoulders. In 30 seconds, I told that man my life story, that I was a foster youth, that I was a runaway, da-da-da. And guess what? He didn't have to come hunting for me. I fell right on his lap. And for that, from 4 years of my life, it was hell.
I just want to make a point to what Orry said in the beginning so that listeners can hear. She said for the first time, she trusted someone. And see, that is how many girls fall prey that quick. First, she trusted the young lady that didn't look like her. That society says this is how kids are supposed to look. Because you heard how she described this young lady. She said that she never felt like she fitted in. She never felt comfortable with who she is because society has told her, this girl comes from a decent home, her mom has a decent job, you trust her because she appears to be this way. And that girl had already had exposure to an environment that her own mother did not know about, which now she took a vulnerable person that she met doing community service into a lifestyle that she had no idea was going to happen. But that predator knew the first thing to do to identify Orry was to say, are you okay? Because no one in her family has ever asked her how she felt.
Pass the plate. Pass the bowl. Reverend, let me put, you are preaching right now. You are preaching right now. What was your normal? What was your everyday life? What was that first night like when you were recruited? Talk about, what was your normal? What was your days and nights? What did they consist of?
You know, I want to put it out there because so many people, even after I've done trainings and presentations, I get the number one question, well, why didn't you just leave? Why don't girls leave? And people don't understand. Let me explain something. My normal was completely different from anybody else's at 11 years old. My normal was having a 45 millimeter gun in my mouth. My normal was having sex to 10 to 15 men a night, making money and handing over and not seeing a dollar. My normal was getting whacked upside my head when I couldn't hit my quota. My normal wasn't mommy and daddy tucking me in at night or someone playing with Barbie dolls and playing sports. That wasn't my normal anymore. My normal was being called right out of my name consistently, forgetting half of my name half the time. My normal was completely different from anybody else's and any child's. So I was used to chaos. Chaos became my normal, and anything outside of that I wasn't comfortable with. I didn't like that. So it was very hard for me to just come into, I think, like, even after being getting out of the life and having an amazing support system, but like my life was completely different for 4 years.
Absolutely.
Being told when to eat, when to sleep, what to wear, how to say it, what to say. And I'm evolving, right? And I'm starting to have this different personality. I can explain the first time I ever got arrested at 11 years old. I was the youngest in the facility at Sylmore Juvenile Hall Center, and I slept outside of a boat. I didn't even sleep in the room because we didn't have capacity, and I couldn't sleep in a room with a 16-year-old. I completely remember the first time I ever got arrested. From the second time I came back, I was a completely different person.
Absolutely.
For the first time, I had this ponytail, my hair very much of a kid. The second time I came back, at 12 years old, I was branded on my neck. I had a long weave. I had nails. I had eyelashes. Right at 12, and the staff even seen it. And just it was a complete change for me. But people don't even could understand or even think or even know that something like that is happening to their kids. The beating, like the rapes, like having a man like physically assault you, although you feel like you love him. Like me at 11 years old, not even understanding sex, but feeling like this is the way, in my mind, this is how somebody says that they love you, because I've been abused by, my like a family friend and my mom's boyfriend, right? Like those were normals that came into my life, and even it affected me as I got older, right? Even being out of the life after 15 years old. It was okay to be in domestic violence relationships because that was still normal, although I wasn't in the life. It was okay to hang around certain people and people to use you and abuse you because that was normal. My love wasn't pure. It wasn't nice. It was being hit upside your head, or it was pain. It was being called any type of name, or if I didn't make money, like I slept in urine, right? Like those are the things that my normal consisted of as a child. Period. And nobody would ever understand that. But people don't wrap their heads around of what kids are experiencing and why it's so difficult, not difficult, but challenging when a kid returns home or even returns back to the system. I wasn't this bad, angry kid. I was a broken and hurt kid that was looking for love in all the wrong places. And now one time in my life, right, even when I wanted my mom to, she didn't know how to. Like, how do you hug your child so tightly and just say, I love you after all that? My mother didn't even find out I was being trafficked. My adopted mother is now passed away. And that was 2 years ago. And I found my biological mom 2 years ago as well. And we have an outstanding relationship. You would be very surprised. But I'm now 22. But at 20 years old, my mother found out I was being trafficked, and it hit the LA local news. And she called me like, I thought you were doing better. You're in college. You're doing amazing. Why is this stuff on the news? Like, you've been lied to. And I'm like, Mom, that's why I was running away. That's why I couldn't come home. And it was a silence on the phone because it was like, and I remember her last thing, she said, how could I have protected you if you were out there? And, it could have been a different response, but it was, she didn't know what to say. And a lot of that and everything that I've experienced had total effect even after being out of the life, right? On relationships with people and trusting people. I wouldn't get as close as we are to a man at all. I wouldn't shake your hand. Like, I had very, very bad trust issues, and everybody, the world was on my shoulders, and everybody that came in contact with me wanted something from me. And at 15 years old, I still believe that if a man said that I love you or that we're together, I'm even obligated to have sex. I can't tell you how many kids I've met that don't even understand their bodies, that think that this is what I have to do. And my childhood was just, it was very difficult. And I can honestly say, I know, just speaking for me and not all survivors, but it played a huge part. It wasn't the let me tell you something. If people could ever look up, it's a video actually on YouTube of a bottom girl and a pimp. And I can
great transition, because I was going to ask you about the terminology that was being used. What is a bottom girl?
A bottom girl is someone that has been in the life the longest with the pimp, who's maintained the most loyalty with the pimp. She's like his right-hand man. And sometimes what's unfortunate is that when she is picked up, she may be charged with human trafficking. And a lot of our law enforcement, and some people don't know that she's still a part of the life. Just because she may be collecting money from him, or he's in another state, or he's in jail, right, and she's running the other girls, she's still being exploited herself. And she does a lot of the recruitment. So like for me, my first trafficker, I wasn't the bottom girl. Someone groomed me into being a part of the life. But this my second trafficker, which was a girl and pimp, I was the bottom girl. I went into group homes. I went into schools. I recruited kids. But a part of that role is just saying, oh, I love you more. Like, these girls are fighting for a hierarchy of position that when you call bottom girl is the bottom. Like, but she's the top person. She's making the most money. She maybe gets to sleep with him, or, get to go on dates and stuff with him. Like, make it seem like this normal relationship, and what it's really not. Like, she's still being exploited. So,
and I'm looking at this.
I call her the administrator.
Who?
Right.
The bottom
girl.
Yeah.
And I'm looking, Deborah, you gave me this list of sex trafficking terminology. It's 4 pages long. It's like 200 words. And then I'm seeing here like ATM. Now, I know what ATM is to me. You know what I'm saying? And to the normal person. But all these acronyms, it looks like a menu for a
normal conversation, everyday conversation.
It's like a sex menu. It just is amazing that they have their own language. Yes.
Because it's a different world. And that's the way that... And a lot of times we do that in order to make it feel like it's normal, to be honest. Like, for so long, a lot of people didn't even know when I was in juvenile hall or wherever I was at, like group homes, whether I was at home, that when I'm talking about daddy on the phone, I'm talking about my pimp. I'm not talking about my dad.
Exactly.
Right? Like, but we miss those things. People in schools, so we're not going to just talk about the system. We're going to talk about schools. We're going to talk about anything that people don't notice those signs. They don't know the language. So.
Okay. No, you brought up a good point in talking about, parents, and some parents not even knowing. And Rachel, I'm going to get to you. But before I do that, I want to play this another excerpt from Santoya's story. And this is a soundbite from an interview with her adoptive mom. And I'm sure there's a lot of parent blaming going around when they're talking about, how did your kid get on the street? How did you not know that your daughter was in this lifestyle? So I'm going to play an excerpt from Santoya's documentary with her mom, and then I'm going to get you guys' feedback. Let's take a listen.
Where was I when all of this was happening? Where was I? I mean, could you not come to me and talk to let me know how you was feeling? And it's just, I don't know. I'm thinking at that age, I won't say most children or even all children, but Santoya, I don't think she was very trusting of me. Maybe she thought that anything she confided to me about, that it wouldn't be just to me. Maybe she thought that I would share that with someone else. I don't know. Because we have a good relationship. I don't understand why she felt that she couldn't come to me and talk to me, no matter what it was.
If I tried to tell her, she wouldn't listen. She'd probably just tell me, okay, sweetie, go play. That's what she used to always say.
No parent wants to think that their young daughter, is experiencing sex, especially at such a young age. And then to find out that there's been many, several boys and men, but it does not change how I feel. That is my daughter. She's always going to be my daughter. No matter what she does or have done, that isn't going to change how I feel about her.
Rachel, can you relate to Santoya's adoptive mom in terms of not knowing, just completely oblivious as to the activities that your daughter was doing outside of your purview?
I can relate to her because I was taking my daughter to school every day, and I was picking her up every day. In between school, I guess she was going to meet the guy. The way I found out was by her dad.
Okay, her father, the one who's 5 blocks away?
Yes.
Okay.
He was driving down the street. He saw her on the track. He calls me at work and say, I just saw your daughter on Long Beach Boulevard.
Your daughter, not his daughter, not our daughter. Your daughter.
Your daughter on Long Beach Boulevard on the track. I leave my work. I go get my daughter. I get her home. She runs away. I chase her down the street. I call the police. Everything. They take an hour. By that time, I grabbed her up again. And when I finally get to her, I'm talking to her, like, what's going on? Tell me what happened. And she was just like, leave me alone, leave me alone. I'm not the parent where you can't come talk to me.
Okay.
I talk to my daughter about everything. We lay in the bed together. We watch movies together. We have dinners together. We have special dates, everything. So when I found out, I'm asking her dad, why you didn't pick her up, talk to her from a man perspective, and let her know about how this view from a man perspective.
And what did he say?
I ain't got time for that.
This is his child.
His child.
And Deborah, when Santoya's mom was speaking, and she said, how come I didn't know? How come you couldn't come to me? Why is it difficult in terms of, some of these daughters being able to open up and talk? Do they not trust them? What is it that prevents them from sharing this aspect of their life?
Looking at that interview documentary, there's several things that are actually going on with Santoya's adopted mother. One, she's a older lady, so she doesn't really want to have those conversations because she wasn't raised that way. The number one problem continues to what we talked about from the time this show started at 4:30. Santoya never connected because she knew that was her adopted mother. She was looking for a mother outside of her mother, and even in that relationship, she never got a mother. At that point, now it goes back to what Oree said. Now I don't trust anyone that I should be trusting. So I'm going to go out there to get the information that I need.
Okay.
And it's not parent blaming. It is sometimes as parents, we just don't know.
All right.
We do the best we can, and we don't know.
Right.
So for her to feel sorry for herself is fine, but let's just do better. When we know that we have made a mistake, let's just do better.
Let's just do better. We're going to take a call right now. We're going to go to Sherry Shepard on. Hi, Sherry. You're on with the front page. You have a comment or question for our guest?
Yes, thank you so much for this show. I'm sitting in the car in my driveway. I can't get out of the car. For somebody like me who is listening to something, my heart is breaking because we're not protecting our children the way that we should. What can somebody like me do to help you, Reverend?
Excellent question. Deborah?
At the end of the show, I will be giving my email address and my phone number. Again, I will be in the process of opening specialized housing for these victims in 2018, and we are going to be looking for employees and volunteers. So stay tuned.
Thank you, Sherry.
And we do training. So
thank you so much, Sherry, for your call. In case you're just tuning in, I'm Starlett Quarles filling in for Dominique DePrima. And this morning we have been talking about human sex trafficking in today's urban youth. We're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to continue our dialogue. The phone lines are open, so give us a call here if you have a comment or question for our guests right here on the front page of 102.3 Radio Free KJLH. We'll be right back. Hi, this is Starlett Quarles of The Dialogue, and I'm excited to announce that we will be returning this summer with a series of new shows addressing topics that are relevant to today's generational leaders. So join the conversation by subscribing to our YouTube page, following me on social media, or signing up on our mailing list at thedialoguela.com. Tune into The Dialogue with Starlett Quarles. Real talk, real people. Welcome back to the front page. If you're just now joining, I'm your host, Starlett Quarles, filling in for Dominique DePrima today. This morning, we've been talking about human sex trafficking in today's urban youth with my guests, Reverend Deborah Manns, Orry Freeman, and Rachel, a parent of a sex trafficking survivor. And during the commercial break, we were looking at some of these sex trafficking terminology. And you guys wouldn't believe what really ATM, it ain't getting money. I mean, it is, but that's not like that. Not from a machine. I'm just looking at some of these acronyms. BCD, BFE, BLS. I know what BJ is. DDP. I mean, these are acronyms that kids are using in their homes, and their parents are totally oblivious to really what they're communicating. Yes, Deborah?
Absolutely. Absolutely. They have their own language, and when they talk amongst each other, they use those acronyms to explain what they're going to do when they get to the date. Now, vernacular is so different, so they don't call them tricks or
they call them dates.
Johns, they call them dates.
Okay. All right. And so, Orry, in terms of all these terminologies, did they not beat them, but how do they train you to understand this language? How do you use these words?
It's just like a job description, right? Like, or a job protocol, which you're following. Like, if anything, it's like training, right? Like, you're being groomed, you're taught these words. Mostly, though, other than just like families, a lot of times it's for law enforcement, so that law enforcement won't know those acronyms and won't know those terms if things are happening over the internet, because you do have, law enforcement that are very involved now and just doing a lot the way that they just won't get caught, right? Because there's just certain rules and stuff to the game that you can't do. Like, another thing is may not, just not for an acronym, but a girl can't even look up, like, reckless eyeballing, like, you can never make eye contact with anybody else. But those are just terms too, like, just for people not to understand, but directly too, though, just for law enforcement not to be able to be charged with anything.
Okay, we're going to take another call. We're going to go to JC, who's been on hold for a very long time. Hi, JC. Welcome to the front page. You have a comment or question for our guest?
Yes. Let me just start by saying what an interesting show you have. I'm a licensed therapist. I've been licensed like 30 years, right? And I've, worked with a numerous different mental aspects of mental health treatment. Now, the condition you're talking about now, you guys started off talking about I don't know who it was talking, but they were talking about the effects of slavery, right? How the black people in America have been traumatized for years and years and years of just making it. And now it's coming on the roost. We have a bad mental health problem in the black community. Not all, like you said, not all of them, but there are some that is just out there scuffling.
Yeah,
this
absolutely.
is just one situation of many situations. Not just the young girl that was talking. You could hear in her voice. She was just talking so fast, and
her passion, absolutely.
Yeah, you can hear the trauma. You can hear it.
Yeah, absolutely.
She has no way of getting it out, and you gave her an access today to get it out. Now she's trying to get all this out at one time, and it's hard. And I'm trying to get it out myself. So each one. Now, let me just mention some things. The effects of slavery, right? Okay, you got spiritual warfare that's going on, right? You got that. You got self-awareness. You got mental illness, undiagnosed. You got President Trump. There's a new tax bill coming out. All these things coming out as black people has more trauma. So parents have a hard time when they're not having been parented.
Right. Yeah.
So we have a condition on condition on condition on condition. So it's going to take resources.
Yeah.
We need resources, not just throwing it out there, giving to those same nonprofits that's not doing anything with the money.
Now you're talking
You know what
real.
I'm saying?
All right.
I got frustrated. I don't got so frustrated.
Ooh, I'm sorry.
I'm 70 years old almost. But I've been able to, God has blessed me to be able to maintain myself, because we have to take care of ourselves.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Get selfish to a point, because you're not going to be able to do anything unless you get yourself.
Unless you get yourself together. Thank you so much, JC. I appreciate you holding on and for contributing to the conversation. Oree, what is life like for you today? How were you finally able to escape? And what was who was your main support system?
I actually had a couple, but I remember for the first time in my life, I met someone at 15 years old at one of the group homes where I was at, located in Orange County. Other than working out there, I was placed out there in a group home. After that was my 17th group home.
17th?
Yeah. I met a man that, we don't like to say rescue. We don't like to say that kind of stuff, but honestly, that was the man that saved my life. As far as for the first time in my life at 15 years old, someone talked to me about being not talk to me, but told me that I was a victim, right? And his name is Jim Carson, and did something really amazing for me. And he's a male, right? And that was very new to me. That was different. But after explaining that I was a victim, right? Being this 15-year-old and being well, I'm choosing to be out here and this is what I want to do, because that's how I was. Explaining that I was a victim of the things, and I'm sorry for what has happened to you. I'm sorry that nobody ever apologized or never hugged you and told you that, I'm sorry for what has happened to you as you were a child and stuff like that. And then the next thing that he said stuck with me for the rest of my life, and being 22 years old now. And that was, you can continue to play victim and say, what was me running around here tearing up the cottages and being this angry person, this kid, right? Or you can fight for yourself, because nobody was going to fight for you like you fight for yourself. You have a choice now in order to do right, not just to do right, but have the choice of freedom and to move forward in your life. And I never had anybody in my life that was consistent. Even when I AWOL'd a couple times, this man would answer my phone call at 2 o'clock in the morning. Jim doesn't care if you are in Utah. He's going to find his way. He's going to find you a way back. And for someone that has took so many blows as far as for language and just things that you say as a hurt kid, he was consistent. And at 22 years old, that man is still in my life. And now my business manager that does a lot of the stuff that I'm just not right.
Shout out to Jim.
And also, too, I had a probation officer who, was supposed to be here today by the name of Tara Woolfolk. And she was the first person regarding this system, and just a woman that believed in me, a black woman that believed in me. I can't tell you how many times I talked about that in therapy, these white people that care about me, right? Because that's how I was. And she was the person that understood me, was able to relate and know my basic needs and knew what I needed, other than just someone. When she got me, an officer basically had wrote on my file, good luck with her. And when she came into the picture, she didn't think about always locking me up, although sometimes I probably deserved to be put back in there for my actions and stuff. But she knew that, I needed to be treated like if I was a teenager. Literally. She held me accountable. And I can't explain enough how people don't understand that although I was probably in not the best situations and may not have been dealt with the system correctly at that time, because it's changing now. But she did what any mother would do, right? And not only that, she was just consistent with me. Like, and at 22 years old, me out of the system, completely off, like, everything, she's still in my life. I still call her about everything because she played that important role in my life. That means something to me. And you need those supportive things. And now I do advocacy for a local agency, but a lot of it is just independent contract work that I do as my LLC, and basically do trainings and stuff. Not only just as giving this testimony, because we're more than survivors, but a lot of times on how to interact. I love doing trainings with law enforcement. That's kind of like my niche, my gig, right? It's just how to interact with these youth and how to be human, because some people don't even know how to be human. And lowering that authority role, or just asking someone at the gas station that you know in your gut, or in the nail shop, or in the grocery store, right? Are you okay? Is there anything I can do for you, whether you get the finger or not, right? Like, those are the things that a lot of times that I talk about and stuff. So that's where I'm at right now. I mean, I'm in a healthy state. I do actually go to therapy on a consistent basis, because where I'm from, like, my family doesn't believe in therapy, like, or whatever. I have a great relationship with my mother. You know, I don't have any kids. I'm in
Do you want to have kids?
Yeah, one day, but not right now. I'm only 22 years old. Like, I want to be married, like, and stuff. I'm in an amazing, beautiful relationship with a man right now. And I had to learn that, though, because for so long, right, like, I didn't even know how to be a good friend. I didn't know how to be a good daughter to even my mom now, or, you know, be a good sister, because I had very unhealthy relationships and stuff. So that's where I'm at right now. Like, that's my passion. And other than law enforcement, I work with kids. Like, I'm 22. Like, I still get it. Like, I know where they're at. I graduated in 2013. Like, I know it's a little bit away, but it's not that far. So, yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
How can people find you if they want to get in contact with you?
They can get in contact with me if, like, whether it's for information, resources. Actually, Orange County is actually also opened up a home for the ages of 18 to 21 for survivors that are getting out of the, well, actually just like exiting emergency safe home. And it's by OC Safe Homes, and they could contact me. The email is ocsafehomes.org, or they can also contact me by my cell, which is 714-337-1575, or they can also contact Jim, which is at jim@ocsafehomes.org.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Rachel, how's your daughter doing?
At the present time, she's gainfully employed. She graduated school last year. She's doing good. Unlike Oree, she doesn't like therapy, so we still struggling with that. I like to thank God first for giving me the strength to be able to support her,
right,
and get the resources that I need. I like to thank God for Reverend Deborah, who helped me out tremendously, and talked to my daughter, gave me therapy, guidance, and everything. And I like to thank my home church for all the support that they gave me as well. And I like to thank you for having me on your show.
Of course, absolutely fantastic. And you said your daughter's pimp is now incarcerated. You helped him get incarcerated.
Yes,
Matter of fact,
ma'am.
she testified against him.
Yes, ma'am.
How has her transition been since he's been incarcerated?
It's difficult, but
she's doing good.
She's doing good.
Okay. Fantastic. You know, Deborah, what support do girls need in order to be able to escape this lifestyle? What do they need?
Orry said it best. Project Destiny actually is a advocacy mentor program. We have been in existence for 9 years now. And basically, even when I'm doing the trainings, I let everyone know to do this work and work with survivors, you have to become a surrogate mother. Mm-hmm. You have to be consistent. You have to be there for them. Everyone that knows the Rev knows that I will get out of my bed at 3 o'clock in the morning and go pick a girl up off of the blade, stooping down between two cars, hiding from a pimp or a date. I have done ride-alongs with law enforcement. Project Destiny is a huge part of why they have a first responders program in the county of Los Angeles for the work that I have done with law enforcement. But these girls are looking for a person that believes in them, that meet them exactly where they are. They don't come with their own plan. They just want to know, what can I do to help you, and build that relationship from there. Be consistent, be committed, be unjudgmental, and give them everything that they need so that they don't have to go out to the street. And the biggest thing I tell people working with these girls is you just have to have patience. Yep. They will cuss you out, they will go off on you, and you just have to not say anything. And I know that that might be hard for some people to hear, but it's the truth, because their reaction to how they treat you has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with what happened before they got to you.
Okay. Before we go, I want you to quickly talk in terms of government resources. You talked about racism. There's some racism in the sex trafficking industry when it comes to resources.
There's a lot of racism when it comes to resources. There's a difference when a black or brown kid is arrested for laundering with the intent of prostitution versus a European kid. And then there's another huge issue around international sex trafficking versus domestic sex trafficking. So people need to know those terms. But in our urban communities, that is called domestic sex trafficking. And our black and brown kids are put into the system every day compared to other kids that are taken to resources, taken to a shelter, or returned back to their homes. They're actually incarcerating our children within our communities.
And if people want to support you, Deborah, how can they find you?
They can find me on Facebook at Deborah Mans, DeborahK Mans, or they can email me at virtuouswomaninc@yahoo.com, or they can call me directly, 310-270-7520.
Okay, fantastic. I want to thank you all so very much for getting up with me this morning on the front page. Reverend Deborah Mans, Orry Freeman, and Rachel, thank you so much. Today ends my week here on the front page, but I will be back on Tuesday, December 26th for my series of conversations geared around the first 4 days of Kwanzaa. Until then, have a very Merry Christmas, a Happy Kwanzaa, and I am signing off as my mama's child and my daddy's baby girl. God bless you, and rest in peace, Cliff Winston.